And I had this full-on memory of this light coming through the ceiling, blue light. It hit me. It was like a column of light. It hit me. I curled into this fetal position and I went through the ceiling.
Welcome, everyone, to We Are Not Alone. Maycay Beeler here with Queen City News Plus. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm the Chief Transportation Correspondent here at Queen City News, also a seasoned professional pilot. I've been flying for 40 years and counting. And when people find out I'm a pilot, they say, oh, you must have seen things. What have you seen? Have you had a UFO encounter? Well, today, our special guest has had one. She is a UFO experiencer and an award-winning actress with a very storied resume. Beautiful name, Camille James Harman, joining us from Los Angeles. Camille, good morning.
Good morning, Maycay. Thank you for that intro.
Well, thank you. You have quite an impressive life, a lot of accomplishments. Can't wait to hear about the UFO experiencer part of that. But tell us a little bit about your exciting career.
Well, I started acting in my 20s when I was in college, not as part of college, but on the side in community theater in Lafayette, Louisiana. And then it just progressed from there. I moved to Virginia. I was doing theater there. And then I decided to go back to school and get a master's at University of New Orleans. So I went back to Louisiana and did that and acted in a lot of things while I was living in New Orleans in school and after school, because there's a lot of filming there. So it was a great opportunity. And it was actually when I moved to Los Angeles in 1995 from New Orleans that the whole UFO alien thing started. And it kind of derailed my career for a while. So it's been a long path of integrating my obsession with this UFO subject and my career aspirations.
Okay, so I have to ask, what prompted this obsession? Was it an experience or were you just interested, intrigued? What triggered it?
Yes. Well, the first thing was I was still living in New Orleans in August of 1995. And we were going to move to LA the following month. But I felt compelled at the bookstore to buy this Whitley Strieber book called Breakthrough. And it was just compelling me. There was that alien face on the cover. And I didn't often buy hardcover books, but I bought it and I read it and it kind of blew my mind. And so that was my introduction to the subject.
So for those, just very briefly, for those of us not familiar with the book, in a nutshell, it's about aliens? What's it about?
It is. It's written by Whitley Strieber, this famous UFO abductee / experiencer who's written many books. His first one was Communion, which was
familiar with that one. Okay.
Right. So one of the ones, after that. And I was just amazed because it talked about the government involvement and, abduction and all of this. It was a lot in that one book, but it really, blew my mind. So that was my first introduction, other than, Close Encounters of the Third Kind or things like that. That was really my immersion into the subject. So when I got to LA, I was already really interested in the subject. And we got a house on a hill. And I remember telling the landlord, oh, this house has the best view for looking for UFOs. Little did I know. So it really happened very quickly after getting
I have goosebumps, by the way. Keep going. I have goosebumps.
Oh, yeah, we were walking our dog. It was Silver Lake. The neighborhood's called Silver Lake. And we were walking our dog one day and she started barking at this squirrel that had run up a palm tree. So we're looking up at the palm tree and we see this thing. It was broad daylight and it was black and it was very, very high and it was stationary relative to this palm tree. And it had a kind of a shimmer around it. So it was hard to make out the shape of it. I'm thinking it was a triangle. I don't know. It was really, really
How high was it, Camille?
I don't know. I'm not a pilot, but It really was like almost a dot, but
it's really high up. Okay.
Yeah. And so I said, oh my God, what is that? And my boyfriend said, you and your UFO books, and I made eye contact with him and we looked back up and it was gone. And that's when we both got excited because we had this huge view of the sky and there was no thing. It was gone. So I actually handed him the leash and I said, I'm going home to report this. So I ran home and there was actually a UFO hotline in the phone book back then. And so I called it and it was MUFON. And I said, oh, I know. I read about MUFON in that Whitley Strieber book. And the guy, he took my report. I don't think I fully did the whole shebang, but I talked about it. And he said, "Oh, we have these meetings once a month if you want to come." So I said, "I am there. I'm totally there. I'm coming." So I started going to the meetings. And meanwhile, other things were happening in the home front that were the signs of my first abduction experience.
Whoa.
So,
Okay. Whoa, 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 whoa. Other things were happening on the home
right.
front. Define other
Well,
things.
I started having no menstrual cycle, to be honest. And it was very strange because, normally if that ever happened, I would just go get a pregnancy test and find out, right? But I didn't. And I just kept waiting and waiting. And around December, so we moved to LA in September, around December, I still had no menstrual cycle. I woke up, I had this horrible sleep paralysis attack during December, the same month we saw the UFO. And I wish I was keeping a journal, but I wasn't. And anyway, I woke up in my bed frozen. I couldn't move. And I heard this mechanical sounding voice say my name, just my name, while I was in this frozen state. And I saw a flash of a gun pointed at me, just like a flash of an image. I was like, what is happening? And then my boyfriend was watching a movie at that time. He was in the living room, but then he came back and it happened again that night. And I started crying and he woke up and, it was very weird. So,
Well, were you dreaming? Were you asleep?
no, I was not dreaming. I was awake, but it was this weird state. It had never happened to me. I'd had the sleep paralysis, but I'd never seen an image or heard a voice. It was the whole combination. What was
Camille, the sleep paralysis, is that a normal thing that happens to people with sleep problems, or is this something metaphysical?
There are arguments both ways.
Okay.
So the metaphysical explanation I've heard is that it's the sensation of your body changing dimensions. So,
whoa.
So,
okay.
I started suspecting after seeing a talk by Kim Carlsberg at MUFON. I started suspecting I had some kind of alien experience. And I met a famous hypnotherapist at that meeting, Barbara Lamb, and I said, I really want to have a session with you and target this weird night when I had this attack in my bed. By the way, my menstrual cycle came back in January. So we targeted this event. This was in April the following year, 96. And I had this full-on memory of this light coming through the ceiling, blue light. It hit me. It was like a column of light. It hit me. I curled into this fetal position and I went through the ceiling. And I'm terrified. And the next thing I am conscious of is I'm laying flat in this misty room, this white light that was very misty. And there was a row of beings to my left that all looked alike. And I was terrified. They had the big black eyes and white robes with a high collar. They had some kind of an emblem that was like a triangle inside a circle. And I was just utterly terrified. I mean, my teeth were chattering. I was screaming. It was
oh my God.
Experience in the hypnosis. And and then I saw a flash of an instrument, like a gynecological instrument. And a little embryo was taken out of it.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
And I had a total nervous breakdown.
Oh my God.
They walked out.
Camille, were you in pain? What are you feeling anything? I know you were scared, but are you cold? Do you have clothes on?
There was a very slight memory of the pain. It was a vague memory of as far as my clothes and things like that. I do remember my knees going open without anyone touching them, which was, again, very terrifying because I felt not in my control. And I know this is really weird. I know this is so weird. But anyway, and then my therapist sends me home with this little cassette tape that I play for my poor boyfriend. He's like, oh my goodness, this is really bad.
Right.
Yeah. Not true. Then you're crazy or you're delusional.
Yeah.
So very hard. You can't unsee it. You can't unfeel it. You just have to deal with it. And I had no explanation for this other than what I recall.
Camille, can I ask you, and I'm sorry, I have so many questions.
I know.
When you saw this fetus, did it look human?
Well, I saw it inside the slats of this speculum instrument thing. So I couldn't see it. I saw like a pink blob. It was the size of maybe a walnut.
Oh, it's that little. Okay. I guess I was thinking of it's like an embryo as opposed to a fetus.
Well, it was very tiny. And, I didn't get a good look.
Got it. Okay.
Very quick. but I felt this horrible, I felt bereft, and I was weeping and saying, they didn't even let me see it. And I just felt like, and there was this telepathic, all they would say to me was like, relax, and Barbara was asking me in the hypnosis while I was hysterical, because she has to guide you because she can't see what you're seeing. She has to force you to describe.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, she said, what are they telling you? And I said, I have a baby and they want it. So I know this sounds crazy. The story is among the community that they are making these hybrid creatures from us and them, right?
Yeah.
I have no memory of being impregnated. I have no memory of ever seeing this baby in the future. That's all I got from that. But there were many more abductions that followed. And they also had physical evidence.
Let me ask you one thing, just being a mama, and you're a mother in real life, correct? In real life. I mean, you're a mother of a human child. I'm a mother too. Did you feel a connection to your baby?
I don't.
No, you felt no connection.
Yeah, I do hear stories of other people feeling very, like they miss or they've been taken to see their baby and hold their baby. I don't have any of that memory. I've even tried under hypnosis and I don't have that coming up. But I'll tell you, when I got pregnant with my son, who's 23 now, I had so much of the same symptoms, like at the time with the heartburn and the sore breasts and other pregnancy symptoms.
Mm-hmm.
And it made that experience in 95 more real when I was pregnant with my son in 2001. And I was very panicked, reliving those symptoms early on. And it wasn't until my second trimester when I was showing that I really calmed down a little bit and was positive that this time it was indeed a normal, situation. I was going to have a child. So that was the beginning. I know it's kind of, there, but that's how it all started. And then there were many other experiences.
I wonder, and I want to hear more because I'm intrigued, but after we have babies, they say that the mother is forever changed, that we always carry our child's DNA. I wonder, have there ever been any tests done from other mothers like you that they could go in and do a blood test to see that there's some odd DNA in you? I know that's a weird hypothesis.
That's a great question. I've never heard of doing that. That sounds amazing. And I mean, if someone wants to come up with that test, I've done a test for ancestry, for instance, but they didn't tell me that. So that would be
I'm just curious because, the mother instinct that we have with our children and our babies, and we're forever changed. All right. So I want to hear more about the other abductions. Do you think that your interest in UFOs, aliens, did that attract them to come to you? Like, for instance, do I need to be afraid because I'm doing this podcast that I'm going to have an experience?
It does seem to be, and it's interesting because when I went through a born again phase where I dropped out and I just went to church, and there are a lot of people who think this is demonic, and I thought that for a while, and they said, well, you opened a doorway, through different sin, right, that this happened to you. And that could be possible, but I do think it's more complex than that. I used to think that's what it was. Now I think it's more than that, but that might be an element of it. So I would say,
if it could be demonic, it could be angelic too, right?
Exactly. And there are people, including myself, who've had very positive experiences. So I think what it is there's a certain veil, and some people are built or there's a timing built into them. In my case, my husband's an astrologer, and when we met, he looked at my chart at that time in 1995, and he said, oh, you had the indicators in your chart of having a subconscious awakening. Mm-hmm. So, it was just the timing was right, because now I actually suspect there were things going on in my childhood, because I have indicators from childhood of this experience as well. But, that would be things like extreme nosebleeds as a child, allergies have been linked to this, paranormal fears as a child, and even the things in pop culture I was scared of. Like, I was scared of the Sleestaks from the Land of the Lost and the creature from the Black Lagoon. Now, both of those are what we would call reptilian-looking things.
Yeah.
In aliens. So perhaps as a child, I had an encounter with a reptilian, and that's what made me afraid of those very specific things from television. So, it just makes you wonder. You start to look at everything, when this happens, you're like, why me? And what else is kind of weird in my background?
Are you empathic? Have you been able to be in touch with any loved ones who have passed or have any interest in metaphysics? I'm just wondering because somebody
Yeah,
told me there might be a connection that if you're
right.
sensitive to one, maybe you're sensitive to the other.
I have not had experiences with people from, deceased relatives. I tend to be very I tend to be very logical, even though I am metaphysical. My nature is to go towards information and obsessive reading and obsessive analytical, not obsessive feeling. So the feeling experiences I have had have been predominantly while under hypnosis, actually. Um, I don't, I tend to be a more logical brain than an artistic brain, and which is strange because I'm an actress, but my superpower is communication. So whenever I
Sure.
talk about this publicly or just in a gathering, like on set and a shoot, or I'm very out of the closet. I've always been doing interviews and talking about it. I meet so many people that say, wow, since you told me that, I'm going to tell you this. And so for
Mhm.
me, I learn so much from others by being open conversationally. And I can go in a room full of people and go right to the person who's had this experience and they're my new friend. It is everywhere. And so maybe I resonate with them in some
Yeah.
way
Yeah.
and it starts the ball rolling. I don't know.
Um, are you afraid? I mean, to think that the experience you had to me would be terrifying. I think I would be afraid to go to
Yeah.
sleep, to go back
Yeah.
to bed, that they may come again.
Right. Well, yes. And during this time, because I had this other experience where I was abducted and I had a triangle put on my leg, this equilateral triangle scabbed like 3 puncture wounds on my leg. Um, and that was terrifying. And I was also, I had woken up 3 mornings in a row at 4 a.m. sharp for no reason, 400 on my clock.
Mhm.
So I went to another hypnotherapist for that. And that's how I got the beings with the triangle. And one of the beings had the robes and the high collar and the big black eyes, but then it morphed into a praying mantis being.
Mhm.
So I don't even trust the true form of these things. I don't understand if they're real, if they're avatars, if they're some archetypal something. It's very mysterious. So,
And
but
Camille,
I went to several people to make it stop. I went to this lady who said she could make it stop. I found an ad for her in a magazine. And I was like, I'm coming to see you. And she prayed over me and she said, you made contracts to work with these beings on a soul level and you can sever the contract. And I
yeah,
said, do it.
yeah,
So she prayed over me.
yeah,
I've worked a lot with prayer. I've had an experience stop by praying,
yeah,
and
yeah,
so it stopped happening. I had this like
yeah,
kind of flurry of activity in 1995 and 96, and then it stopped happening. So now I'm very particular when I do
yeah,
invite this in prayer or just looking at the sky. I say, dear God, please send me your good angels
yes,
work with again.
yes.
I've also had an angelic encounter under.
Can you tell us that? I want to hear about the
Yeah.
angelic
So I
encounter.
found myself saying things like, I miss some beings. I was saying like, oh, humans this, humans that. And I went to my therapist, Barbara Lamb, and I said, Barbara, I'm talking like I'm not human or I'm connected to something not human. Can we target that? Is that too vague? And she said, no, let's try it. So I went under hypnosis and I started screaming, like, I don't want to be in this body. It's so weak. And I was having like a panic attack and I felt like someone was taking a sofa and stuffing it into a pillowcase. And she said, well, go to when you felt not like this, like when you felt happy and powerful.
Yeah.
And so I popped out and I was in space and I was this blue orb. And I recognized my friends who were blue orbs. And I was looking at Earth and I didn't want to go. It was spinning and spinning. And I was like panicking, like on a diving board, a high diving board. And I didn't want
Ooh.
to go. And she said, well, ask if ask, like, why do you have to go to Earth? And these white light beings appeared that were enormous, pure love. And I was just overwhelmed and I started crying and I was merging and I was in this union with these beings. I don't know what they were. I call them angels.
Mhm.
And I said, they're my home. They're my family. That's why I wear white bathrobe. That's, it's just like, I was
Oh my
like,
gosh. Oh my
so
gosh.
and they told me I had to go to Earth to fight evil. And I said, oh my gosh, okay, what do I do? And they said, tell people we exist and that we love them. And they were sending love to the planet. And I said, how do I do that? Do I like lecture about you? And they said, through your acting. And I was like, okay, really? Like Hollywood doesn't make a lot about
Wow.
And they said, don't worry, we'll set it up so you meet people and make projects worthy of your time. And I said, okay.
Wow.
And they said, you'll reach more people if you continue acting. And I said, okay.
Interesting.
And
because you're in a high profile position. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
and the very next film I did, even though it was just a little short from USC, it was called The Encounter, and it was about a man who has an angelic encounter. So I was his wife in that movie.
Yeah.
The very next film I did. So it was very strange.
Yeah.
So, I've had all these experiences, plus I've had a military abduction memory to something my dentist found in my tooth. I went to my therapist and said, my dentist found this weird thing in my tooth. What happened? Let's do a session. So I thought I was going to have an alien memory, and I had a memory of being in a regular room with guys in lab coats. That's a whole other world, this whole aspect of the...
Let me ask my producer, do we have time for this, Austin? Next interview.
Well, we're going, but anyway, so I'm just here to say there's good, bad, and ugly, and it's a mystery. I don't have all the pieces, but I keep telling my story because I just want to be a part of the puzzle.
Do we need to be afraid?
You need to be cautious. Yes.
Okay, I'm blown away. One last thing before we go. The stigma of talking about this. You're obviously a very intelligent woman. Did it hurt your career?
I'll never know because no one ever tells you why they don't cast you in everyday life if you're just a normal person not talking about this. So I would say I don't care. And the world is so crazy, and so many celebrities are so crazy that I told my agent and manager, I said, I'm going to go back and start doing interviews and documentaries. And, this is a hot topic now. I think the world's ready, and I just don't care. I'm 58 years old, and I don't care.
Whoa. Okay. Very briefly, how can people get in touch with you or learn more about you, I should say?
I have a website, which is my name, CamilleJamesHarman.com. They can go there, and there is a contact page, or they can just follow me on social media. I really enjoy X. That's where all the good, juicy UFO news is, as on X, actually. And but they can find all my socials there or write to me.
Camille, we're going to do a part 2 with you because I want to hear about the military and the babies and the hybrids. I mean, this is really heavy stuff. And I also want to know, is full disclosure coming soon? Can you just tease us with a...
Yes, absolutely. I'm very confident. I'm confident on all fronts. I think the beings themselves are involved in the timing of disclosure. I think that's why there's so many people my age group that are sitting in my experiencer meetings. I think, we're all of the age of authority. So we're here to help the public integrate this information. I think the current administration is all about disclosure of many things. So this has got to be included. And I even think the new Pope, it's very exciting.
I wonder about that too.
The Nazca mummies, which people should also look into, the Nazca mummies, which are being analyzed in Peru that seem to be non-human beings with 3 fingers and 3 toes and big heads. And it's a whole thing. Just trust me. Go look into the Nazca mummies.
Okay.
And he may know about that.
We're going to talk about that next time. I cannot thank you enough. You're a very busy woman, and we're so grateful for your time. Wow, Camille James Harman, thank you so much. And thank you to everybody for listening in. There's going to be more. So stay tuned for We Are Not Alone on Queen City News Plus. I'm Maycay Beeler. Thank you so much for watching. And if you enjoyed watching this content, be sure and download and watch our full series, We Are Not Alone, on Queen City News Plus. So you can find the app using your streaming devices, including Roku, Amazon Fire Stick, and Apple TV. All you need to do is search Queen City News Plus. Your support will help us continue this content. We truly appreciate you.